I'm feeling particularly loquacious this morning. Uh, I wanted to have a serious talk, a serious chat. Well, it's neither of those things. I'm just talking and nobody's responding. So I wanted to run my mouth for a little bit about race and privilege and why my views have changed. Um, just a little bit about me. My name's Mike. I live in Mobile, Alabama. Been here since '84. Raised in the military. 54 years old. Divorced. 4 kids who hate me. Uh, my family has deep roots here in Mobile, Alabama. My great grandmother told me stories about her father, who was in the KKK. He was actually the head of the KKK around here. She told me this story one time um, about how she was sitting on her front porch, and a black man in a suit, I think she said, was walking by. And he pulled out a knife and cut off a piece of sugar cane that was growing in their yard. I guess that's something they used to do around the beginning of the 20th century. And she said when her father found out, next day the man was hanging from a tree. And she didn't say this, like with horror, with reverence. It was just, fact to her. And so, but I found that very disturbing, as I guess any child was. I was probably 9 when she told me this story. Different breeds back then. And so I would say when I was 16, 17, I held more racist views than not. And that just, sort of built upon itself. I think part of it might have also psychologically been like, teenage rebellion or something. I grew up, my family, tell me all those stories, tell me stories about, the freedom marches and stuff, and how black people had sex on the Capitol steps in Montgomery after some MLK march. And my experiences with black people were very limited and mostly negative. I think I had one sort of friend associate who hung out in one of my friend groups who was black. Very nice young man, won't mention his name. But no, there were two. There were two. They were both really similar, though, personality-wise. And when I say personalities, I mean sort of like Carlton from Fresh Prince. Those were the only two positive interactions I had with black people. And just the, going about your day-to-day life, the interactions I had with black people were mostly, if not neutral, I'm sure they were neutral the vast majority of times, but negative. Those were the ones I remember, which that's being human, man. We remember the negative. That's one of the reasons Homo sapiens came out on top. Our big brains. He says he likes a cancer stick. Better enjoy these while I can. That hospital visit is coming quick. Anyhow, in my early 20s, I moved into a mostly black neighborhood. Again, most experiences were neutral. Had one or two good experiences. Nothing really bad though. And I think I just became more and more liberal at that point. And then that bled into other areas. Became very vocal about gays having the right to marry. I aligned myself with the Democratic Party. There's even still some videos on this channel of back in the day. I was eventually a full-blown socialist. But I think the political stuff, I think that was genuinely a desire for a better world. I mean, to this day, man, I think we should still have universal health care, as opposed to the system we have now. I'm very against children going hungry. I think it was Charlie Kirk I was watching. I agree with some of the stuff he says, but Jesus Christ, man, he was like, he was talking against free lunches for kids. Someone asked me, well, what are they going to do then? And he said, well, their parents should feed them. Okay, man. I mean, yeah, you are absolutely right in principle. Okay, principles don't put spoons in mouths. I have no problem with letting some person who is too lazy to work go hungry. Okay, if I had to work hard, most of my adult life, then everybody else should too. But kids can't. They can't defend themselves, man. They can't go, pick up cans around town and take them to a recycling center and or do meal delivery, like Uber Eats or shit. I mean, you don't let kids go hungry, man. I don't care where they come from. I don't care if they are U.S. citizens. I don't care what race they are. I don't care what their parents' political affiliation is, etc., etc., etc. There's no fucking goddamn exception. If you are a semi-decent human being, you do not let a child go hungry. Okay. That is absolutely 100% not up for goddamn debate. I'm rambling here, I know, but you knew this coming. So universal health care, kids not going hungry. I don't know if housing for veterans is a liberal issue or a conservative issue, because liberals are very much against people being homeless, and the right wing is more pro-military. I come from a military family, so I've always kind of straddled that line myself. But that's a big one, man. If you stepped up to serve this country, there's no way in fucking hell you should be homeless unless you want to be. As I understand it, a small percentage of them do prefer to live in a tent in the woods. And hey, it's America, baby. If that grinds your gears, then go for it, pal. Yes, I realize I just used that phrase wrong. English is a wonderful language. You still understood what I was saying. So I would write articles. The local newspapers became somewhat, I guess, infamous on that account. Um, had a little bit of a fan club. I'm being sarcastic, man. People did not like me. But I think gays should be able to marry. Uh, um, I think gays should be able to serve in the military. I didn't say trans. I said gays. Um, sorry, collecting my thoughts, man. At my age and with whatever's going on inside of me, it's like fucking butterflies in a thunderdome. No, I don't got any idea what that fucking means. I was against the death penalty. I still am to some degree. Not because I have such a high regard for human life. Just more because I have a better understanding of government efficiency. And our legal system is geared towards the rich, man. I mean, OJ got away with it. And not to single out him, I mean, lots of, rich people have gotten away with murder. That's the one that just, I guess, sticks with me as a generational thing. Because he was just so obviously fucking guilty, But it wasn't about him being innocent or guilty, honestly. That's not what that case was about. I'm really praying this recent one with Carmelo Anthony doesn't turn out like that. There's signs it might. I guess we won't know for a year or two, the way our legal system drags out. That one's changed. Death penalty one has changed. I just don't care. 99% of them are guilty of the crimes. Yes, some innocent men do get executed, and that is a shame. I just don't agree with Franklin on the subject. And also, I mean, there's worse fates, man. I mean, solitary, that's worse. By that comparison, death penalty is certainly not cruel or unusual. Prison culture has just always fascinated me, man. I've always been fascinated by any isolated offshoot of human culture. The Lord of the Flies was one of my favorite books growing up as a kid. So things along that line. And still this day, I watch all these shows on gulags and prisons. Sorry. The Gulag Archipelago. That's a great book, man. I really don't care for Russian literature. I think it's a translation thing. I've tried different translators. But still, that book is captivating. I understand now people are trying to say parts of it are made up or whatever, man. We've turned into this, part of us have turned into this pro-Russian Kremlin bootlicker state. It's goddamn embarrassing. We are fucking Americans. And we are sure as shit better in Russia. But hey, man, what the fuck ever. That's not what I'm talking about. So, if you've listened to this, 15-minute preamble, uh, you probably got a good idea of who I used to be and in some ways still am. But yeah, man, I've changed. I think it started in 2016 when the Democrats screwed Sanders. Clinton was giving secret speeches disguised by noise machines to wealthy individuals. They wouldn't agree to make a minimum wage hike a staple of their platform. Yeah. So yeah, Sanders was the last Democrat, and he wasn't really a Democrat, but he was really the last one that I would get behind. After that, I just knew the party was dead. Well, actually, I had a little bit of hope for a little while. I was like, okay, well, maybe since Clinton lost to Trump, and Trump was, just a terrible candidate, maybe they'll get more progressive. And maybe they'll get serious about universal health care instead of, the weak ass shit that's Obamacare. They didn't. They elected Biden. And we see how that worked out. Yeah, great job, Democrats. That guy who was in Dumb and Dumber, Jeff Daniels. Just an amazing actor, really an amazing. I mean, I wouldn't put him up there with Denzel Washington or Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt, but still a very gifted, talented man. There's this video you can find of him on YouTube where he's in some show where he's a newsman, and he's on this panel on stage in front of a crowd of college kids talking about politics. It's a really great clip. I highly recommend it. Don't want to get into too many spoilers if you haven't seen it. But at one point he turns to the representative of the liberal side, and he tells her, he says, why people can't stand Democrats? Because you're such fucking losers. And he's right, man. I mean, they're losers. I really liked Obama as president. Yeah. But come on, man. So much shit you could have done. You controlled both houses. We could have had universal health care, man. Could at least legalize weed. Maybe that's too much of an ask from our first black president. And no, Clinton was not black. He's just a race hustler and a pervert. I remember it was 92. And even though I would have been 21 at the time, for some reason I was watching this round table of the possible Democratic candidates. There were about 8 of them, as I remember. And Bill Clinton, I'll never forget where he was sitting. It was literally like an oval-shaped table, and there were 4 people on the right side and 4 people on the left side. And I think the moderator was towards the south, and Bill Clinton was in the far right position on the left-hand side. And I thought to myself, listening to his answers, this is the dumbest son of a bitch I've ever seen on TV. Shows what I know. I still don't think he's that smart. I mean, a horny rabid fox isn't necessarily smart, but it certainly might be cunning. he's destroyed that young girl Malinsky's life, at least for a while. I think she's doing better now. Anyhow. One of the greatest men I ever knew was black. That's my friend Danny. There's a big, long, weepy video about him. You're welcome to watch it. Danny actually set me straight on a lot of racial stuff, man. And if you don't want to watch that long-ass, boring video, I'll recount a brief anecdote here in this long-ass, boring video. We were arguing about reparations, Danny and I. And I was arguing for them. And because slavery was awful, man. I've actually read the book Roots, okay? I've actually listened to the FDR slave narratives, all of them. There's like 12 fucking hundred. I spent like 2 years listening to all of them, just because, I guess, like prison, that the institution of slavery fascinated me. It's a terrible thing, slavery was genuinely awful, but also slavery. We all have ancestors who were slaves. Okay. 18th century whites were still being kidnapped and put into slavery. Look up Barbary pirates sometime. But still, just because it's universal doesn't mean that it's any less awful or traumatic. And for a very long time, blacks were treated very poorly. There is no denying that, man. As time went on, they got better. I think the last lynching we had here in Mobile was in 81, I want to say. Poor young man hung from a light pole. And I want to say he was a teenager. Since then, we haven't had those kind of incidences. And also in the 80s, you had the disparity in the sentencing, which I think is still a problem in the 90s. Look up crack versus cocaine jail time, 1980s, if you want. So, anyhow, it's hard not to argue that damage has been done to the black community in the past. Not in the present, okay? I'm not saying now, but in the past. And that there should be some restitution or remediation, to bring the generational victims of those atrocities up to the current opportunistic standards of those who did not have to go through that, whose ancestors didn't have to go through that in our history, in American history. And Danny was like, Mike, man, that's all well and good, but if you gave, let's say $10,000, just as a random number, I realize that wouldn't actually be real reparation money. But he said, Mike, you just gave everybody $10,000, They would blow it without any financial literacy. He didn't use those two words, financial literacy, but that was his point. They wouldn't know what to do with it. They would just blow it. I'm certainly not going to be one to judge on that front. And he was right. He was no Uncle Ruckus, but he had a severe dislike of ghetto culture. He'd served a little bit of time, and the boys who have their pants down around their hips, showing their underwear. Sometimes you see like all their buttocks, He said that in jail or prison or whatever. I think he just went to jail. I don't think Danny ever went to prison. Those were the guys trying to sell their booties. That's how you knew, who you could peg in there. And he wasn't crazy about, like, a lot of the more talentless rappers. We both liked Immortal Technique. I remember I used to irritate him. I'd say stuff like Coolio is the greatest rapper of all time, and Gangster's Paradise is the best rap song. He'd get so irritated. I'd argue that Pistol Pete Malkovich was the greatest basketball player of all time. Oh, man. But anyhow. So, man, for most of my life, I had a lot of white guilt. Combine that with, kind of an idealistic, almost Pollyannish, set of ideals, man. The problem is, man, is that the shit, the world just isn't that way. We're never all going to get along. We're never going to, gather around a communal campfire and sing Kumbaya. Humans are not intrinsically benevolent or good, and altruism, all that shit doesn't exist. We work with each other because there's more chance of survival in a pack. We help others because it's a good survival strategy. Maybe they'll help us if we're ever in need. I'm not saying love doesn't exist. Okay, I love my kids. I love Danny. I loved my ex-wife. I love my parents, etc., etc. But once you get out of that really small circle, man, I quickly go into being more concerned about my headache than your cancer. To quote Stalino, one death is a tragedy and a million is a statistic. And now, man. Oh, shit. Goddamn arthritis. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck, man. Jesus Christ. Getting old sucks. Anyhow. Where was I? Anyhow. And now I turn on the TV and shit, man. All I see and hear is uh, hate hate white men. White men are the devil. White people need to stop procreating. Uh, or man, you mentioned this Carmelo Anthony thing, man. Go look at the comments on his fundraiser. Yeah, I mean, he stabbed a young man in the heart with a knife at a track meet, and people are like, oh, Whitey is so mad. I love this. Whitey had it coming. Kill all white people. What the fuck, there, man. Um, and then you got at least until very recently had all these young girls, and I've got a daughter, getting hurt by these trans athletes and losing spots on teams and losing medals. How can you look at the case of Leah Thomas, whatever that dude's calling himself? I do not respect pronouns. Sorry. How can you look at what happened to the young girls that he competed against and not see the inherent intrinsic unfairness of it? That young girl got put in a coma. Or the myriad of sexual assaults that have happened in women's spaces. Cause yeah, man, when it first became an issue, like in 2016, I think it was around then. I'd met a couple, trans people in my life. Didn't have any problem with them. Felt kind of awkward around them because they were basically just really ugly dudes in dresses. But yeah, it's America, baby. Yeah, if that's how you want to live your life, and you're not hurting anybody else, and more power to you. Yeah. And that was that was similar to the argument I had for gay marriage. And they're not hurting anybody. They just want the same tax benefits, basically, as the rest of us get. They contribute to society. So why shouldn't they have this right? Whatever your religious beliefs are. And I'm not saying churches should be forced to perform ceremonies, but I'm saying that legally, marriage is an institution. It's a civil institution. And so civilly, people should have equal rights. So that's my whole argument. You're not going to convince me otherwise. But yeah, man. I mean, I felt in part like the gay rights that I had, vociferously vocalized for, were now being used to hurt society, to hurt women in our society and young girls. And so, I stopped advocating. How could I align myself with that? How can I advocate for blacks to be treated equally as whites when the blacks are advocating for the opposite of that. And on top of that, the black community is not standing up saying, no, that's wrong, we don't agree with that. They're silent on it. And it probably is a bit much to expect Al Sharpton or somebody to stop race hustling. But hope springs eternal. Now you got students on campus, white students, Jewish students, who are being harassed, and with the support of the administration. Having to listen to chants about ethnic cleansing. How am I supposed to align myself with that? Seriously, what the fuck is wrong with you? How can you be tearing down hostage posters of infants, apologizing for October 7th? I mean, nobody's got clean hands over there, man. So when you start making excuses for one side, it just betrays your agenda. Yeah. There's really no solution over there except death, I'm afraid. Death or diaspora. That wouldn't be the first time both solutions have been applied in that region. Might be to a different group this time, though. Diaspora. Another one of those words I think I've only read. English language, baby. Gotta love it. So, take this last election, man. Okay. Now, I am not Trump's biggest fan, not personally. I won't go into all that, but I don't think much of him, on a individual character level. But how in the hell was I supposed to align myself with the Democrats? Because they're embracing all these groups that hate me. By default, hate my children and their children. I can't get behind that, man. That's stupid. You're a cow and you vote for the butcher. You're an idiot and deserve what you got coming. race relations in the USA are getting worse. And the solution to that, I think, has to come from within the various racial communities themselves. Um, it was whites convincing other whites that racism was bad. It'll have to be blacks convincing other blacks that racism is bad. Because the ones who are racist aren't going to listen to the people they're claiming are evil. It's not rocket science. Morality and ethics and, wanting the best for humanity. That's all fine and well and dandy. And it's wonderful if your civilization is at a place in its history where it can explore and act upon those topics. The problem is that those better angels of our nature, if left in continuous operation, will eventually be used against us. That's what we're seeing now, man. We wanted to let people into this country because we built something really amazing. Now they come over here, they're murdering and raping and stealing, taking over apartment complexes. Trump said he would stop that. He sure as shit did. The only way he could have been more effective, I guess, is have, a shark-filled moat dug across all of Texas. But other than that, man, wow, Biden was such a weakling. Never thought I'd see a president weaker than Carter in office. Biden said, "Hold my beer." How can you expect me to get behind that, man? I mean, come on. Fucking Biden. Biden was no Obama, baby. Obama got bin Laden. I sent him to live in a pineapple under the sea. I'll always respect Obama for that, if nothing else. He got that son of a bitch. Good on you, Obama. God, I wish I could have been in that room, watching on the cams as the SEAL shot his eyes out. I hope they sewed him up in a pig before they threw him overboard into the ocean. Dildo up his ass. Son of a bitch. Yeah, so then, hearing all these voices, on social media and the news, about how awful white people are and how we deserve to be murdered. And then they want to take my guns. Yeah, that's going to make me safer. And I'm not saying that they've actually tried to take the guns, okay? I'm just saying that they're ideologically There are very strong and vocal elements within the Democratic Party that is against the Second Amendment. I'm not saying there isn't room for gun reform either. But, if you back me into a corner and make me choose all or nothing, I'm choosing all. And come on, people. It sucks, man, because I still believe in my principles, but I realize it will never happen. And I guess that makes me a fool. To want to live in a world where everybody is housed and fed and has medical care and has education and the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are just words. The reality is I have to post, warning signs around my property. I have to deliberately create a choke point into my residence so I can more easily shoot any invaders should they appear. I have 3 dogs for a reason. God forbid I ever have to hurt anybody, because that's not what I want to do. But as I guess the entire point of my chat here is that if you make me choose between me and mine and you will lose 100% of the time, just like I would if the roles were reversed. And if I have to choose between survival and noble ideals that are, never going to occur regardless, I choose survival. I guess it'd be one thing to die for a cause that had a chance, but to die for one where the very people that you've advocated for are calling for your destruction, well, I've already said my piece on that. I tried for so long to believe that people were basically good. But they're not. So yeah, I've changed. I really don't care if the world burns. Yeah. Everything I believed in, everything I worked for came to naught. What a fool I am, and what a wasted life. No, anyhow, I don't want to become maudlin. We are in the last days of the Roman Republic, my friend. It is Byzantium. The Turks are at the gates.